After leaving the Flowery Dean, with Mary Ann's callous jibe still ringing in my ears, where had I gone to next? South? No, north, for I can at least remember the stirring sight of a row of starched white angels serving hot food and handing out Bibles, even at that ungodly hour, to a boisterous brigade of Spitalfield's version of Judea's needy 5,000 at the door of the East Providence soup kitchen. Awed by their example and chastised in equal measure by my own flagrant failure to always live up to my high and mighty ideals, I'd asked the Lord once more what I could do, and though I carried no loaves or fish with me, and could not turn drain water into wine, there was surely some other act I could carry out on his behalf. How did Proverbs go again? Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy plans shall be established. In my work, then, was where the mission lay. I rode the streets, or I take it I must have done, for blurred snatches of the next 3 hours returned, with effort, reluctantly to me, as I'd searched for my allotted task in the worsening rain. I now recalled taking shelter under a railway bridge, and speaking to a Dutch sailor who inquired with great concern about what had painted the night sky red. When I told him of the inferno, he shook his head and scowled, declaring that all who sailed to London grew fat upon her wealth, and that my city had just lost everything. Finding him too melodramatic for my mood, I'd ridden on, and some time later must have dropped off another fare, for I had a vision of pulling up outside the grey brick citadel of Whitechapel's Poor Law Bastille, as it stood in the gloom like a tired but watchful mother awaiting her wayward child's return. Most painfully of all, I then retrieved the final excerpt of the night's forgotten business. It had been after 5 o'clock, for the sun's first rays had chased the clouds out of the sky. Here, on the cusp of day, in the deserted streets, was when I loved the city best, and I'd marked once again, as if anew, like every morning, how it was often at the fringe of things that fresh wonders were revealed and old truths reaffirmed. Guiding the Hansom south along Baker's Row with a view to heading home, I'd fancied that I could see another vehicle approaching. Pulling up in the haze, I'd shielded my eyes to try to see what it was that lumbered towards us with such ungainly movement and stuttering speed. At first, I thought I'd stumbled on a scene from olden times, with a queen carried aloft her courtier's shoulders in a weighty sedan chair. Then, with sudden alarm, I made sense of the strange shape, and knew I was witnessing the day's first labours for the men of London's hand ambulance. As it drew up beside me, 2 red-faced orderlies blew hard under the weight of their dead load, lowering the stretcher and sighing with relief as they tried to catch their breath. "Good morning," I greeted them softly. "Is it?" panted the lead one, throwing me a black stare. "Not for you, I'll avow." "Who is it that you carry?" I asked, noticing the frill of a muddy skirt poking out from under the cover. "Must you?" he snapped. "Be very careful, sir, of what it is you wish to see," with that reaching down and yanking back the cloth. "Noah?" the other leered, relishing my reaction. I shook my head and looked away. "Nor we. But she's only a tart, they say, and no great loss. Though I doubt even she deserved to die that way." "What about you? You just starting?" his partner asked, and I knew he was eyeing up the Hansom in the role of a temporary hearse. "I have just finished," I told him, "and am driving home." "Lucky you. For us, this is the first of many. Don't let her spoil your sleep." "I will try," I said. I watched without further word as they lifted the litter and bore her on to the last leg of her earthly journey, to be stripped, poked and prodded, wrapped in sheep sacking and flung, minus all ceremony, into a pauper's grave. After riding back to Bermondsey in Stabling Bow, I'd left the yard and walked the few 100 yards home to my foxhole with the warming kiss of the rising sun on my back. Halfway down Albert Street, I'd come to the familiar front door, and on going inside, had paused outside the parlour, before deciding instead to hang my wet cloak over a chair in the hall. Heading upstairs, I'd entered my room and stood at her side of the empty bed, which had, I confess, of late, turned into something of a shrine. Beside the relics of such a beautiful life, what could that other woman's fate really mean to me? Led by the lingering suspicion that all such persons brought their end upon themselves, and confronted by the sight of the love and hate that can dwell in a single human heart, the maimed body on the handcart was proof once more that man and woman, made equal in God's sight, can never really be, and that, in this world, a woman without a husband will never come to any good. For the eyes that had stared up at me and refused to leave my head as I climbed into bed did not belong to just a tart or a fallen stranger, but were those of my friend, poor Bloody Mary, alias Polly, also known as Mary Ann.